50 people. I counted them. I counted them because I needed something to focus on while Margaret Hayes destroyed everything I'd worked for in front of every single person who mattered at this company. She was holding my report, the one I'd spent 7 months creating, the one I'd missed my grandmother's funeral for. Yes. My grandmother's funeral. She died on a Tuesday. The presentation was on Wednesday. Margaret said rescheduling wasn't an option, so I said goodbye to the woman who raised me through a phone screen while my cousin held the camera at the cemetery. And now Margaret was standing at the front of the conference room, my 247-page strategic analysis in her hands, and she was smiling, not a warm smile, the kind of smile a shark gives right before it bites. "I've reviewed Rachel's work," she announced, her voice carrying to every corner of the room. "And I have to be honest with all of you." She paused. 50 people held their breath. "This is, without question, the most incompetent, embarrassing, utterly worthless piece of garbage I've seen in my 19 years in this industry." She dropped my report on the floor. Let it scatter. Pages everywhere. 7 months of work. Scattered across the carpet like garbage. 247 pages. Each one representing late nights and missed moments and sacrifices nobody knew about. And then she looked directly at me. "Rachel, I genuinely don't know how you've survived here this long. Maybe it's time to consider whether you're in the right career." 50 people. Dead silence. I could feel their eyes on me. Some looked at their phones, some looked at the ceiling, some looked at the floor. Nobody looked at me. Nobody defended me. Nobody said a word. And I just sat there, frozen, humiliated, broken. But here's what Margaret didn't know. Here's what nobody in that room knew. That moment wasn't my ending. It was my beginning. Because I didn't cry. I didn't quit. I didn't even respond. I just started planning. 6 months of silence. 6 months of watching. 6 months of waiting. And then I struck. But before I tell you how I destroyed Margaret Hayes' entire career without breaking a single rule, I need you to understand who I am, who she is, and exactly how we got to that conference room. Trust me. You're going to want to hear every detail of this. Who I am. My name is Rachel Morgan. I'm 32 years old. I grew up in a small town in Ohio where the biggest employer was a tire factory, and the second biggest was the hospital where people went when the tire factory hurt them. My dad worked at that factory for 31 years. He started when he was 17. By the time I was born, his back was already ruined. By the time I was 10, he walked with a permanent limp. By the time I was 16, he couldn't work anymore. Disability paid almost nothing. My mom took 3 jobs. I took 2. I worked at a gas station from 4 a.m. to 8 a.m. before school. Then I worked at a grocery store from 4 p.m. to 10 p.m. after school. Homework happened somewhere in between, usually on my breaks, sometimes not at all. My guidance counselor told me I wasn't college material. She said it nicely, sympathetically, like she was doing me a favor by lowering my expectations. "Rachel, there's nothing wrong with staying local. The tire factory is always hiring. Your father worked there. It's good, honest work." I smiled at her, went home, applied to 14 colleges that night. I got into one. A small state school, 3 hours away. Partial scholarship. The rest I covered with loans and work study and a job at the campus bookstore that paid $7.25 an hour. I graduated in 4 years with a degree in business administration and $67,000 in debt. My first job paid $32,000 a year. Marketing assistant at a company that sold industrial cleaning supplies. Not exactly glamorous. But I showed up early, stayed late, learned everything I could about how businesses actually worked. After 2 years, I got a better job. Then a better one. Then a better one. Each time, I worked harder than everyone around me. Not because I was trying to prove something, because I knew what the alternative looked like. I'd seen my dad's hands, cracked and calloused. I'd seen my mom fall asleep at the dinner table because she was too exhausted to make it to the bedroom. I wasn't going back to that. 7 years after graduating, I landed at Whitmore and Associates. It was a consulting firm. Mid-size. Growing fast. The kind of place where talented people could actually move up if they delivered results. At least, that's what they told me in the interview. What they didn't tell me about was Margaret Hayes, the villain. Let me tell you about the devil who wore Chanel. Margaret Hayes was 54 years old when I met her. Senior Vice President of Strategic Operations. On paper, she was impressive. MBA from a top school. 25 years of experience. A corner office with a view of downtown. In reality, she was something else entirely. I figured her out within my first month. See, most bad bosses are obvious. They yell, they threaten, they make their cruelty visible. Margaret was different. Margaret was surgical. She smiled when she destroyed you. Complimented you on your way down. Made you question whether you were the problem, not her. That's what made her dangerous. Margaret had a system. A perfect, ruthless, untraceable system for climbing the corporate ladder while destroying anyone who might threaten her position. Here's how it worked. Step 1. Identify talented people. Not to mentor them, to monitor them. Margaret had a sixth sense for spotting employees who might eventually outshine her. She watched them like a hawk watches mice. Step 2. Get close to them. She'd invite them to lunch, ask about their career goals, offer advice. Make them feel like she was their ally, their champion, their path to promotion. Step 3. Assign them impossible projects. Always something high visibility. Always something with an unrealistic deadline. Always something where failure would be public and spectacular. Step 4. Sabotage. This was her specialty. She'd withhold critical information. Schedule conflicting meetings. Reassign key resources at the last minute. Create obstacles that were invisible to everyone except the person struggling against them. Step 5. Watch them fail, then act surprised. Disappointed. Like she'd really believed in them and they'd let her down. Step 6. Deliver the killing blow. Always public. Always brutal. Always in front of people who mattered. And here's the genius part. She never got her hands dirty. There was never any evidence. If you complained, you sounded paranoid. If you accused her, you sounded bitter. If you tried to explain what happened, you sounded like someone making excuses for their own failure. I watched her do this to 3 people in my first year, and each time, I felt sick to my stomach. Each time, I wanted to say something. Each time, I stayed quiet because I was new and scared, and didn't know what I was seeing yet. David Chen was the first. David Chen. Brilliant analyst. The kind of mind that sees patterns everyone else misses. He worked 80-hour weeks on a market expansion proposal. I watched him come in before sunrise and leave after midnight. I watched him lose 15 pounds because he forgot to eat. I watched him pour everything he had into that project. Margaret scheduled his presentation during a mandatory fire drill. You might think that's a coincidence. It wasn't. I checked the company calendar later. The fire drill was moved. By Margaret. 2 days before David's presentation, he had to present to an empty room. Just him, talking to empty chairs, while everyone stood in the parking lot. Then she told the CEO he'd failed to prepare adequately. Said he'd panicked under pressure, said maybe he wasn't executive material after all. He quit 2 months later. I heard he moved back to his hometown. Gave up on corporate life entirely. That was victim number 1. Priya Sharma was next. Priya was the best project manager I'd ever seen. She could coordinate 15 different work streams, remember every deadline, keep every stakeholder happy. She was organized like her brain was a supercomputer. Margaret assigned her to restructure the entire operations department. Gave her 3 weeks. 3 weeks, for a project that should take 6 months. Priya didn't complain. She just worked. Day and night and day again. I found her sleeping under her desk once. Another time, I saw her hands shaking so bad she couldn't hold her coffee cup. She ended up in the hospital with exhaustion. Her body just shut down. Heart palpitations. Couldn't keep food down. Had to be hooked up to an IV, because she was so dehydrated. Margaret visited her with flowers. Actually brought flowers to the hospital room. Held Priya's hand. Told her to focus on recovery. Told her, work can wait. Then Margaret went back to the office and told HR that Priya had performance issues and couldn't handle pressure. Said it was a shame, but maybe Priya needed a less demanding environment. She was laid off while still on medical leave. The woman who put her in the hospital sent flowers to her hospital room, then fired her before she could recover. That was victim number 2. And then there was Michael Torres. Michael was 28. Same age I was when I started. He reminded me of myself, actually. Hungry. Smart. Working twice as hard as everyone else because he had something to prove. He was developing a client acquisition strategy that could have brought in $2 million. I saw his presentation deck once. It was brilliant. Creative. The kind of thinking that could have changed everything for the company. Margaret took him to lunch, told him she saw leadership potential, said she wanted to champion his career, said she was going to recommend him for the upcoming promotion cycle. Michael believed her. Why wouldn't he? She seemed so sincere. She assigned him to present his strategy directly to the board. This is your moment, she told him. Don't waste it. 2 days before the presentation, she moved a critical operations meeting to the same time slot. Marked it mandatory. Sent a company-wide email saying attendance was required for all team leads. Michael was a team lead. He had to choose between finalizing his presentation or attending a meeting she'd made mandatory. He chose the presentation. He thought his work spoke for itself. He thought the board would recognize his genius, even if the presentation wasn't perfect. Margaret reported him for missing the meeting. Wrote a formal complaint about his insubordination. His strategy was rejected before he even presented it. The board was told he had attitude problems. He was written up for insubordination. Put on a performance improvement plan. He resigned the next week. I saw him on his last day. Packing up his desk, he looked broken, not angry, just empty. I don't understand what happened, he said to me. I did everything right. I worked so hard. What did I do wrong? I didn't have an answer for him. Not then, but I watched him walk out of that building, and I made a promise to myself. Someday, Margaret Hayes would pay for what she did to these people. I just didn't know how yet. I watched all of this happen. I documented everything. Names, dates, patterns. I knew I was next. I just didn't know when. My project. The call came on a Tuesday. Rachel, can you come to my office? Margaret's voice was warm, friendly, excited even. I knew what that meant. I have an incredible opportunity for you, she said when I sat down. The CEO wants a complete analysis of our client retention strategies. Comprehensive, thorough, something that could reshape our entire approach to customer relationships. She leaned forward like she was sharing a secret. I recommended you specifically. I told him you were ready for something bigger. Something that could put you on the fast track to senior management. My stomach turned. This was it. The trap. The timeline is tight, she continued. He wants it in 7 months. I know that's aggressive, but I have complete faith in you. I knew what I should have done. I should have said no. Should have recognized the pattern. Should have protected myself. But here's the thing about Margaret's trap. If you said no, she'd tell everyone you weren't ambitious, weren't hungry, weren't ready for advancement. She'd quietly poison your reputation until you were passed over for every opportunity that mattered. If you said yes, she'd destroy you. Either way, she won. So I said yes. But I also started preparing for what I knew was coming. I kept copies of everything. Every email. Every document. Every piece of research. I tracked every meeting on my personal calendar, not just the company one, and I worked. God, did I work? I interviewed 47 clients, analyzed 5 years of retention data, built predictive models, created frameworks, developed recommendations that could have saved the company millions. The report was 247 pages. Every page was perfect. My grandmother died during month 6. Margaret told me the presentation couldn't be moved. Rachel, I understand this is difficult, but the board has already scheduled the review. We can't accommodate personal situations at this level. This is what leadership looks like. So I said goodbye to my grandmother through a phone screen, and I finished the report. The night before the presentation, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed going over every slide, every data point, every recommendation. I knew it was good. I knew it was thorough. I knew it could genuinely help the company. What I didn't know was that Margaret had already decided how this would end. The humiliation. The conference room was full by 9:55. I'd never seen that many people at an internal presentation. Usually these reviews had maybe 15 people. Senior leadership. A few interested directors. This one had 50. Margaret had invited everyone. I should have known then. Should have recognized what she was doing. She wanted an audience. She wanted witnesses. She wanted my humiliation to be as public and permanent as possible. I started my presentation at 10 exactly. 15 minutes in, Margaret interrupted. Rachel, I'm sorry, but I'm having trouble following your methodology here. Can you explain how you validated these numbers? I explained. Thoroughly, with sources. She nodded slowly. I see. Interesting approach. That was the pattern for the next 45 minutes. Every few slides, another interruption, another question that seemed reasonable on the surface but was designed to make me look unprepared. Another subtle suggestion that my work was somehow flawed. I answered every question, defended every point, stayed calm even as I felt the room's energy shifting against me. Then came the end. I finished my final slide. Recommendations that could save the company an estimated $3.2 million over 3 years. Concrete. Actionable. Backed by data. Margaret stood up. Thank you, Rachel. I'm sure everyone appreciates your effort. She walked to the front of the room, picked up the bound copy of my report, flipped through it slowly, and then she said those words. I've reviewed Rachel's work. And I have to be honest with all of you. The smile. The pause. This is, without question, the most incompetent, embarrassing, utterly worthless piece of garbage I've seen in my 19 years in this industry. She dropped it. Pages scattered across the floor. Rachel, I genuinely don't know how you've survived here this long. Maybe it's time to consider whether you're in the right career. 50 people. Silence. I sat there for what felt like an hour but was probably 30 seconds. Then I did something that surprised everyone, including myself. I gathered the pages from the floor, stacked them neatly, and walked out without saying a word. The decision? I drove home in a fog. My hands were shaking on the steering wheel. My vision was blurry. I'm not sure if it was tears or shock or both. Couldn't tell you what route I took, what traffic lights I stopped at, whether I even used my turn signals. I parked in my apartment complex, sat in the car for 20 minutes. Couldn't make myself get out. When I finally went inside, I sat on my couch for 3 hours without moving, just thinking, replaying every moment, every word. The way she said, garbage. The way she dropped my report. The way nobody defended me. I called my mom that night. She could hear something was wrong the moment I answered. What happened, sweetheart? I told her everything. The presentation, the humiliation, the 7 months of work destroyed in front of everyone. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said something I'll never forget. Rachel, your grandmother told me something before she died. She said, that girl is going to do something special someday, not because life will be easy for her, but because she doesn't know how to quit. I started crying. Don't let them see you quit, my mom said. Don't give them that satisfaction. You're stronger than they know. That night, I made my decision. The obvious choice was to quit, walk away, find another job where Margaret Hayes didn't exist. But I knew what would happen if I did that. She'd tell people I left because I couldn't handle criticism. She'd frame my departure as proof that she'd been right about me. And she'd move on to her next victim without consequence. The same thing she'd done to David. To Priya. To Michael. To who knows how many others before I arrived. The second choice was to report her. Go to HR. Explain the pattern. Show them my documentation. But I'd seen what happened to people who complained about Margaret. HR always believed her. She had 25 years of relationships in this company. I had 3. The third choice was the one I made. I would stay. I would be silent. I would watch. I would wait. And when the moment was right, I would show everyone exactly who Margaret Hayes really was. Not through accusations. Not through complaints. Not through anything that could be dismissed as bitterness or paranoia. Through her own actions. I just needed to create the right conditions. The next morning, I went back to work. Margaret seemed surprised to see me. I think she expected me to quit. Expected me to slink away like the others. Instead, I smiled at her. Good morning, Margaret. She didn't know how to respond. I sat at my desk, and I started watching. 6 months of silence. The first rule of my plan was simple. Be invisible. Become furniture. Become wallpaper. Become the person nobody notices because they're too busy looking at brighter targets. I stopped being exceptional. I became average. Did my work competently but not brilliantly. Met deadlines but didn't exceed expectations. No more late nights. No more weekend projects. No more volunteering for extra assignments. Just average. Margaret lost interest in me almost immediately. I could see it happen. The way her eyes would slide past me in meetings. The way she stopped copying me on emails. The way my name never came up in her conversations anymore. I was no longer a threat. No longer worth destroying. Just another face in the crowd. That's when I started really seeing her. When you're not a target, you become a witness. And I witnessed everything. Month 1. I watched her sabotage a young woman named Jennifer. Same pattern, impossible project, manufactured failure, public humiliation. Jennifer was 26. Fresh out of grad school. So excited to be at Whitmore and Associates. She had this energy about her. This optimism that reminded me of how I used to be. Margaret destroyed that in 8 weeks. Jennifer transferred to another department. Then she quit entirely. I heard she went back to grad school for a completely different field. Another career ruined. Another life derailed. Month 2. I watched Margaret take credit for a revenue optimization strategy developed entirely by a guy named Marcus. Marcus was quiet. Kept his head down. Did brilliant work. He'd spent 3 months developing a new approach to client billing that would save the company $400,000 a year. Margaret presented his ideas as her own at a board meeting. Stood up there with his slides, his data, his recommendations, never mentioned his name once. I saw the look on his face when he realized what was happening. That look stayed with me. That mixture of betrayal and helplessness and rage that has nowhere to go. Month 3. I watched her manipulate performance reviews, ensuring that anyone she perceived as a threat received just enough criticism to prevent promotion. Strong performer, but needs to develop leadership skills. Excellent technical work, but struggles with executive presence. Shows potential, but not quite ready for the next level. Always something. Always just enough to hold people back without being obviously unfair. But evidence alone wasn't enough. I'd seen what happened when people brought evidence against Margaret. She was too established, too connected, too skilled at making accusers look unhinged. I needed something else. I needed her to destroy herself. And then, in month 3, I found my opportunity. The company was pitching for a massive contract. Henderson Corporation. Worth $14 million over 5 years. You have to understand what this meant. This wasn't just a big deal. This was the deal. The one that would transform Whitmore and Associates from a mid-size player to a major force in the industry. The CEO, Robert Whitmore himself, was personally overseeing the pitch. This was his legacy project. His chance to take the company to the next level. He'd been building toward this for years. Every strategic decision, every hire, every expansion, all leading to this moment. And he put Margaret in charge of the strategy. Of course he did. She was his senior VP, his trusted lieutenant. The person he believed had the experience and expertise to land the biggest account in company history. What he didn't know was that Margaret had stopped being good at her job years ago. She'd become so focused on internal politics, on protecting her position, on destroying anyone who might threaten her, that she'd forgotten how to actually deliver results. I watched her assemble her team. She chose people she could control. People too junior to challenge her. People too scared to question her decisions, and I saw her making mistakes. Not small ones. Fundamental ones. Strategic errors that would doom the pitch. She was so focused on internal politics that she'd forgotten how to actually do her job. In month 4, I did something risky. I requested a meeting with Robert Whitmore. I'd never spoken to him directly. Senior executives didn't talk to people at my level, but I sent an email explaining that I had strategic concerns about the Henderson pitch and wanted to share them privately. He agreed to meet. The conversation lasted 20 minutes. I didn't mention Margaret. Didn't accuse her of anything. Didn't complain about what she'd done to me or anyone else. I just shared my analysis of the pitch strategy. Pointed out the fundamental flaws. Offered alternative approaches. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he said something I'll never forget. "Rachel, why isn't this in Margaret's materials?" I kept my face neutral. "I'm sure she has her reasons for the approach she's chosen." He studied me for a long moment. "Thank you for bringing this to my attention." I went back to my desk. And I waited. The strike. The Henderson pitch was scheduled for the last Friday of month 6. I wasn't on the presentation team. Margaret had made sure of that. I was too junior, too inexperienced. Too much of a risk after my failed client retention analysis. But Robert Whitmore had other plans. The Monday before the pitch, I received an email marked urgent. "Rachel, please join the Henderson presentation team. Your strategic insights are needed." It was CC'd to Margaret. I could feel her rage from across the building. The pitch was held in the Henderson Corporation's downtown headquarters. Their boardroom? Their turf? Margaret presented first. Confident. Polished. Completely wrong. She'd ignored everything I told Robert. Stuck with her original strategy. The one built on ego instead of analysis. Henderson's CEO, a woman named Catherine Shaw, interrupted her 15 minutes in. This doesn't address our primary concern. We've been clear about our integration challenges. Your proposal treats them as secondary. Margaret stumbled. For the first time in my 3 years at the company, I saw her lose composure. I understand your concern, but our research indicates your research is wrong. Silence. Catherine Shaw turned to Robert Whitmore. Is there something else you'd like to show us? Robert looked at me. Rachel, would you like to present your alternative analysis? I stood up. My hands weren't shaking. My voice didn't waver. I presented for 30 minutes. Addressed every concern. Showed how our services could solve their actual problems, not the ones Margaret assumed they had. When I finished, Catherine Shaw smiled. Now this is what we needed to see. We won the contract. $14 million over 5 years. The biggest deal in company history. And everyone in that room knew exactly who was responsible. The fall. The aftermath happened faster than I expected. That night, after we won the Henderson contract, Robert Whitmore asked me to stay late. We sat in his office, the corner office, the one with the view of the city lights. Tell me what you know about Margaret, he said. I told him everything. Not with anger, not with bitterness, just facts. Dates, names, patterns. David Chen, Priya Sharma, Michael Torres, Jennifer, Marcus, all of them. He listened without interrupting. His face got paler with every story. When I finished, he was quiet for a long time. Why didn't anyone tell me before? Because she made us afraid, I said. And because we thought you wouldn't believe us. He nodded slowly. I believe you now. The investigation started the next morning. Robert Whitmore launched a quiet investigation into Margaret's department. He didn't announce it, didn't make accusations, just started asking questions. He brought in an outside HR consultant. Someone Margaret had no connections to. Someone she couldn't manipulate. The answers destroyed her. Every person she'd sabotaged over the years came forward. David Chen. He flew back from his hometown to give a statement. Said it was worth it to finally be heard. Priya Sharma. She sent a 47-page document detailing every interaction she'd had with Margaret. Every email. Every meeting. Every lie. Michael Torres. He testified via video call. Still emotional. Still hurt. But finally able to tell his story. Jennifer. Marcus. A dozen others I'd never even known about. Stories. Documentation. Evidence. Pattern after pattern of manipulation, credit stealing, and career destruction. 19 years of victims. 19 years of ruined careers. 19 years of people who thought they were alone. They weren't alone anymore. Margaret was terminated on a Wednesday. No farewell party. No transition period. No chance to spin the narrative. Just security escorting her from the building with a cardboard box. I watched from my desk. She walked past me on her way out. Our eyes met. She knew. I didn't say anything. Didn't smile. Didn't gloat. I just went back to work. Resolution. 3 months after Margaret's termination, I was promoted. Director of Strategic Operations. Her old job, the corner office. The view of downtown. The seat at the table she'd fought so hard to protect. But here's what matters more than the title. I didn't become her. When I find talented people now, I mentor them. Actually mentor them. I give them credit for their work. I help them grow. I make sure they never have to experience what I experienced. David Chen came back to the company last year. He's thriving, building something real. Priya Sharma sent me a message on LinkedIn. She found a new company that values her. She's a VP now. Michael Torres is running his own consulting firm. Sent me a client last month. As for Margaret Hayes, last I heard, she couldn't find work in consulting. Her reputation followed her. Word spreads in this industry, especially when the word is true. Someone told me she's selling real estate now. I don't feel sorry for her. I don't feel happy about it either. I just feel finished. The lesson? If you're still listening, here's what I want you to understand. The best revenge isn't loud. It isn't immediate. It isn't about destruction. The best revenge is becoming someone your enemy never thought you could be. It's succeeding so completely that their attempts to destroy you become the most embarrassing chapter of their own story. Margaret Hayes tried to end my career in front of 50 people. Instead, she ended her own. Not because I attacked her. Not because I schemed against her, not because I played her games, but because I refused to quit when she wanted me to. Refused to complain when she expected me to. Refused to become the bitter, paranoid person she was trying to create. I just stayed, watched, documented, and waited for her to defeat herself. Some people dig their own graves. All you have to do is hand them the shovel and stay out of the way. If you've ever been humiliated by someone who thought they were untouchable, if you've ever been underestimated by someone who didn't know what you were capable of, if you've ever sat in silence planning your next move while everyone counted you out, this story was for you. Don't quit. Don't explode. Just wait. Your moment will come, and when it does, make it count. Engagement section. If this story resonated with you, I want to hear your experience. Have you ever had a Margaret in your life? Someone who tried to destroy you? Someone who underestimated what you were capable of? Tell me in the comments. And if you want more stories like this, stories about people who refused to be broken, who waited in silence, who struck when the moment was right, you know what to do. Like this video, subscribe to this channel, hit that notification bell, because sometimes the best stories are the ones where the quiet person wins. And I've got a lot more of those to tell. See you in the next one.